Welcome to Sinister Happening. Tonight, we delve into the darkest corners of human experience, where reality becomes more terrifying than any nightmare. These are 50 true events, so disturbing, so inexplicable, that they've been seared into our collective memory forever. Prepare yourself for 2 hours of encounters that will make you question everything you thought you knew about our world. 1. The vanishing of Flight 19. What if 5 experienced pilots and their planes could simply disappear without a trace, leaving behind only radio transmissions that still chill experts to this day? On the 5th of December, 1945, Flight 19 took off from Fort Lauderdale for what should have been a routine training mission over the Bermuda Triangle. Lieutenant Charles Taylor led the formation of 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, each carrying experienced crew members. The weather was perfect, visibility excellent, and the mission parameters were standard. But within hours, everything would go catastrophically wrong. The first sign of trouble came at 3:45 p.m. when radio operators received a transmission from Taylor. "We can't find West. Everything is wrong. We can't be sure of any direction. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should." The control tower tried desperately to establish their position, but Taylor's responses grew increasingly erratic. "We can't find West," he repeated, his voice now tinged with panic. What happened next defies all logical explanation. The compasses of all 5 aircraft began spinning wildly, completely malfunctioning simultaneously. Taylor reported that their instruments were going crazy and that they were flying over land that looked strange, but according to radar they were still over water. The final transmission came at 4:25 p.m. "We're going down. We're going down." Then nothing. Silence. A massive search and rescue operation was launched immediately, involving hundreds of ships and aircraft. But here's what will make your blood run cold. One of the rescue planes, a PBM Mariner with 13 crew members aboard, also vanished completely during the search. To this day, no wreckage, no bodies, no debris from any of the 6 aircraft has ever been found. 14 men and 6 planes vanished as if they never existed. The official report concluded that the cause was unknown, but what they didn't tell the public was that the rescue plane had reported strange electromagnetic readings just before it disappeared. Flight 19 became the most famous unsolved aviation mystery in history, and the Bermuda Triangle earned its terrifying reputation from this single, inexplicable event. 2. The Hinterkaifeck murders. Imagine living in complete isolation, knowing that someone has been secretly entering your home for weeks, leaving footprints in your attic and strange sounds in your walls. This was the nightmare that consumed the Gruber family in 1922 Bavaria, Germany. Andreas Gruber, a 63-year-old farmer, first noticed the footprints in the snow leading from the forest to his farmhouse in March 1922, but they only went one way, toward the house. There were no tracks leading away. His wife Casilia dismissed his concerns, but Andreas knew something was terribly wrong. For months, the family heard footsteps in the attic every night. Tools went missing from the barn. Newspapers they hadn't purchased appeared on their property. A set of house keys vanished completely. The family's maid quit abruptly, claiming the house was haunted and that she had seen a figure watching her from the forest. On the 31st of March, 1922, Andreas discovered that someone had been living in their attic, sleeping in their beds when they weren't home, and eating their food. He found evidence that the intruder had been there for months, but whoever it was seemed to know their every move, their every routine, their every absence. That night, someone entered the Hinterkaifeck farmhouse and murdered the entire family with a mattock: Andreas, his wife Casilia, their daughter Victoria, her children Casilia and Josef, and the new maid Maria. Each victim was lured to the barn one by one and brutally killed, but the killer's work wasn't finished. The most disturbing detail that investigators discovered was that the killer had remained in the house for days after the murders, feeding the livestock, eating the family's food, and even tending to the fire. Neighbors reported seeing smoke from the chimney for 3 days after the family died. The killer had lived among the corpses, going about daily routines as if nothing had happened. Despite one of the most intensive investigations in German history, interviewing over 100 suspects, the case was never solved. The killer not only knew the family intimately, but had been watching them, studying them, preparing for months. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the most chilling, unsolved cases in criminal history, a testament to the terrifying reality that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who know us best. 3. The Dyatlov Pass incident. What could be so terrifying that 9 experienced hikers would slash their way out of their tent in sub-zero temperatures and flee barefoot into a Russian wilderness, ultimately meeting their deaths in the most mysterious circumstances ever recorded? On the 28th of January, 1959, Igor Dyatlov led a group of 8 fellow University of Ural students on a skiing expedition to Otorten Mountain. These weren't amateur adventurers, they were experienced hikers, well equipped and trained for the harsh Siberian conditions. Their plan was to return by the 12th of February, but that day came and went with no word from the group. When the search party finally reached their camp on the 26th of February, they found a scene that defied all explanation. The tent had been slashed open from the inside, and the hikers' belongings were scattered in the snow. Footprints led away from the tent, but these weren't the tracks of people fleeing in panic. They were barefoot impressions in snow that was several feet deep, in temperatures of -25°F. The first 2 bodies were found under a large cedar tree, nearly a mile from the tent. They were partially dressed and had died from hypothermia. But climbing the cedar tree were broken branches, as if someone had been trying to see something in the distance, or perhaps hide from something approaching. The other 7 bodies were found scattered between the tent and the cedar tree, but their condition was far more disturbing. 3 showed signs of major trauma. 1 had a fractured skull, another had broken ribs, and the 3rd had severe chest injuries. The force required to inflict these injuries was equivalent to a car crash, yet there were no external wounds. But the most chilling discoveries were yet to come. Some of the victims were found with their tongues removed, their eyes missing, and traces of radiation on their clothing. The Soviet authorities classified the case immediately, stating only that the hikers died from a compelling natural force. What they didn't reveal was that another hiking group in the area reported seeing strange orange lights in the sky on the night of the incident. Local Mansi people reported unusual phenomena in the area and refused to discuss what they had witnessed. The case file remained classified for decades, and when it was finally opened, crucial evidence was missing. To this day, no theory adequately explains what happened at Dyatlov Pass. 9 experienced hikers died in circumstances so bizarre that their case has become synonymous with the unexplained, a reminder that some mysteries are too terrible for our minds to fully comprehend. 4. The Villisca Axe Murders. Picture this: a quiet Sunday evening in small-town Iowa, where families sleep peacefully in their beds, unaware that evil is already inside their homes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike with methodical, calculated brutality. On the 9th of June, 1912, the Moore family attended a church service in Villisca, Iowa, followed by a Children's Day program at the Presbyterian Church. Josiah and Sarah Moore returned home with their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, along with 2 visiting friends, Ina and Lena Stillinger. It was a typical Sunday evening in America's heartland. What happened next would shock the nation and remain unsolved for over a century. Sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., an intruder entered the Moore house while the family slept. Using an axe found in the home, the killer methodically murdered all 8 victims, moving from room to room with terrifying precision. The killer's method was as disturbing as it was efficient. Each victim was struck in the head with the blunt end of the axe while they slept, ensuring they never woke to scream or fight back. The murders were so swift and silent that neighbors heard nothing throughout the night, but the killer's work was far from over. After the murders, the killer spent hours in the house, performing bizarre rituals. Every mirror in the house was covered with clothing. Every window was draped to block out light. The killer even prepared a meal, washing the dishes afterwards. Most disturbing of all, the killer placed bacon and a plate of food on the floor next to the axe, as if offering some kind of sacrifice. The next morning, when the Moore family failed to appear for their daily chores, neighbors discovered the horrific scene. The entire family and their young guests had been slaughtered, but the house showed no signs of robbery or struggle. The killer had entered and left without disturbing anything except to perform these strange post-murder rituals. Despite hundreds of interviews, multiple suspects, and several trials, the case was never solved. The killer had intimate knowledge of the house layout, the family's routines, and the town's patterns. Whoever committed the Villisca murders wasn't just a killer. They were someone who had been watching, planning, and preparing for the perfect moment to turn a peaceful Sunday night into a nightmare that would haunt America forever. 5. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse Mystery. Imagine 3 experienced lighthouse keepers vanishing without a trace from an isolated Scottish island, leaving behind only a logbook entry that suggests they witnessed something so terrifying that it cost them their lives. On the 15th of December, 1900, the steamship Archer was passing the Flannan Isles, 20 miles west of Scotland. When the crew noticed something alarming, the lighthouse that should have been guiding ships safely past the treacherous rocks was completely dark. For 3 days, the lighthouse had failed to shine its beacon, leaving ships to navigate the dangerous waters without warning. When the relief boat finally reached the island on the 26th of December, they found the lighthouse station completely deserted. The 3 keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur, had vanished completely. Their beds were unmade, their meals were half-eaten, and their oilskins hung unused on their hooks. The last entry in the lighthouse logbook was dated the 15th of December, written by Thomas Marshall. Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. But according to weather records, there had been no storm in the area on that date. The sea had been perfectly calm for days. So what storm was Marshall referring to? Investigators discovered that the West Landing, normally 20 feet above the highest tide, had been completely destroyed. Massive stone blocks weighing over a ton had been scattered like pebbles. The iron railings had been twisted into impossible shapes. Whatever had struck the island possessed a force beyond any natural phenomenon. But the most chilling discovery came when they found the lighthouse clock stopped at exactly 12:15 a.m. on the 15th of December. All 3 keepers had disappeared at the precise moment the clock stopped, as if time itself had been frozen during their final moments. The official report concluded that the keepers had been swept away by a freak wave, but this explanation raised more questions than it answered. Why would all 3 experienced keepers leave the lighthouse simultaneously during a storm that meteorologists say never occurred? Why were their protective oilskins still hanging unused inside the lighthouse? And most disturbing of all, why did witnesses on nearby islands report seeing lights moving around the lighthouse for several days after the keepers disappeared? The Flannan Isles Lighthouse mystery remains one of the most haunting unsolved disappearances in maritime history. A reminder that some forces in our world are so powerful and inexplicable that they can make 3 grown men vanish as if they never existed, leaving behind only questions that may never be answered. 6. The Yuba County 5. What would drive 5 grown men to abandon their car on a snowy mountain road and walk into a wilderness where they would meet their deaths in the most mysterious circumstances ever documented in California? On the 24th of February, 1978, Gary Mathias, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, and Ted Weyer, all intellectually disabled men from Yuba County, drove to a basketball game in Chico, California. They were excited about the game and had planned to return home that evening to prepare for their own basketball tournament the next day. They never made it home. The men were last seen at a convenience store after the game, purchasing snacks and drinks for the drive home. They were in good spirits, discussing their upcoming tournament and making plans for the week ahead. But instead of taking the direct route home, their car was found 4 days later, 70 miles away, on a mountain road that led nowhere. The car was discovered stuck in snow on a remote forest road, but it wasn't damaged and had plenty of gas. The windows were down, the keys were missing, and there was no sign of struggle. Investigators found that the car could have been easily pushed out of the snow, and the men were familiar with driving in winter conditions. So, why did they abandon their vehicle? The search that followed became one of the most extensive in California history. After months of searching, they found Ted Weiher's body in a remote trailer 19 miles from the car. He had died of hypothermia, but he had managed to survive in the trailer for 8 to 13 weeks, slowly starving to death. The trailer was stocked with food, but Weiher, who was mildly retarded, had only eaten a few cans of food, apparently afraid to consume supplies that didn't belong to him. The other 4 men were never found, despite intensive searches that lasted years. But the mystery deepened when investigators discovered that several people in the area had reported seeing the men after they abandoned their car, walking deeper into the wilderness instead of seeking help or returning to civilization. The most disturbing aspect of the case was that Gary Mathias, who was schizophrenic and had been taking medication, had with him a supply of medication that would have lasted weeks. Yet witness reports suggested the men had been seen together for days after abandoning their car, walking purposefully into the mountains as if they were following someone or something. The Yuba County 5 case remains one of the most baffling disappearances in American history. 5 men with intellectual disabilities somehow made a decision that led them away from safety and into a wilderness, where 4 of them vanished without a trace, while the 5th slowly died alone in a trailer, surrounded by food he was too afraid to eat. 7. The Taman Shud case. What if someone could die under the most mysterious circumstances imaginable, leaving behind only a cryptic message that has puzzled codebreakers, linguists, and investigators for over 70 years? On the 1st of December, 1948, the body of an unidentified man was discovered on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. He was well dressed, appeared to be in good health, and showed no signs of violence or struggle. But this seemingly straightforward case would evolve into one of the most perplexing mysteries in forensic history. The man carried no identification, and all labels had been removed from his clothing. His fingerprints matched no records in Australia, Britain, or anywhere else in the world. Dental records led nowhere. It was as if he had simply materialized on the beach, without any past or identity. The autopsy revealed that the man had died from heart failure, but toxicology tests found no traces of poison or drugs in his system. However, the pathologist noted that the man's pupils were unusually small and his spleen was abnormally large, symptoms consistent with poisoning by an unknown substance that leaves no trace. 6 months later, investigators made a breakthrough that only deepened the mystery. Hidden in a secret pocket of the man's trousers was a small piece of paper with the words Taman Shud printed on it. The phrase, meaning ended or finished in Persian, was traced to a specific page torn from a rare collection of poems called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The book was eventually found in the back seat of a car parked near the beach, but the car's owner claimed he had never seen the book before. Inside the book, investigators found a phone number written in pencil, leading them to a woman named Jessica Thompson. When shown a photograph of the dead man, Thompson reportedly became visibly shaken and nearly fainted, but she denied knowing him. But the most chilling discovery was yet to come. On the same page where Taman Shud had been torn out, investigators found a series of letters written in pencil, Wergo Babbed, followed by another line that was crossed out. Codebreakers from around the world have attempted to decipher this message for over 70 years, but it remains unbroken. Recent DNA analysis has revealed that the Somerton man was likely an American with European ancestry, but his identity remains unknown. The case has spawned theories involving Cold War espionage, lost love affairs, and international intrigue, but none adequately explain how a man could die so mysteriously and leave behind only a coded message that may never be solved. 8. The Circleville letter writer. What if someone in your small town began sending anonymous letters revealing your deepest secrets, watching your every move, and threatening to destroy your life unless you obeyed their demands? In 1976, residents of Circleville, Ohio, began receiving anonymous letters that would terrorize their community for over a decade. The letters contained intimate details about people's private lives, their affairs, their financial problems, and their personal secrets. But these weren't random accusations. They were precise, detailed, and terrifyingly accurate. The letters were written in block letters, carefully crafted to disguise the author's handwriting. They contained information that only someone with access to private conversations, personal documents, and confidential records could know. The writer seemed to be everywhere, watching everyone, knowing things that should have been impossible to know. Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver, received some of the most disturbing letters. They accused her of having an affair with Gordon Massey, the school superintendent, and threatened to expose her if she didn't end the relationship. The letters contained details about her daily routine, her conversations, and her movements that suggested the writer was watching her constantly. The situation escalated dramatically when Mary's husband Ron began receiving letters threatening his wife. One letter warned that if Mary didn't stop seeing Massey, something terrible would happen. Ron became convinced that Massey was the letter writer and began harassing him, but this only made the letters more frequent and more threatening. On the 19th of August, 1977, Ron Gillespie received a phone call telling him to look at the sign on the road near his house. When he arrived, he found a sign accusing his wife of adultery. As he tried to remove it, someone shot him dead. The murder was never solved, but the letters continued. The most disturbing aspect of the case was that the letter writer seemed to know details about the police investigation, the evidence, and the suspects. Letters arrived containing information that only law enforcement officials should have known, suggesting that the writer either had access to police files or was someone within the investigation itself. After years of investigation, Postal Inspector Paul Fresher was convicted of writing the letters, but even after his imprisonment, the letters continued. The real letter writer had watched the entire investigation, manipulated the evidence, and allowed an innocent man to be convicted while continuing their reign of terror. The Circleville Letters case remains one of the most chilling examples of psychological terrorism in American history, proving that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who remain invisible, watching from the shadows, knowing everything about us while we know nothing about them. 9. The Black Dahlia Murder. What kind of killer could commit a murder so brutal, so methodical, and so perfectly executed that it would remain unsolved for over 75 years, despite one of the most intensive investigations in LAPD history? On the 15th of January, 1947, Betty Bersinger was walking with her 3-year-old daughter in a vacant lot in Los Angeles when she saw what she thought was a discarded store mannequin. But as she approached, she realized she was looking at the severed body of a young woman, posed with meticulous precision. The victim was 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, an aspiring actress who had been missing for a week, but what had been done to her was beyond anything investigators had ever encountered. Her body had been cut in half at the waist with surgical precision, drained of blood and posed in a grotesque display. The killer had spent hours with the body, performing procedures that required medical knowledge and anatomical expertise. Elizabeth's face had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears, creating a grotesque smile. Her body showed evidence of torture that had lasted for days. Most disturbing of all, the killer had washed the body thoroughly before dumping it, removing all forensic evidence that might have identified them. The investigation became a media sensation, with reporters dubbing Elizabeth the Black Dahlia because of her preference for black clothing. But the publicity only made the case more difficult to solve, as hundreds of false confessions poured in from people seeking attention or suffering from mental illness. 3 days after the body was discovered, a package arrived at the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper. Inside were Elizabeth's purse, her birth certificate, her social security card, and her address book. But the killer had soaked everything in gasoline to destroy fingerprints and DNA evidence, then carefully dried each item before mailing them. The package included a note made from letters cut from magazines. "Here is Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow," but the promised letter never arrived. Instead, the killer sent a second message: "Had my fun at police, Black Dahlia Avenger." Over the decades, the case has generated thousands of suspects, dozens of books, and countless theories. But the Black Dahlia murder remains unsolved, a testament to the fact that some killers are so careful, so methodical, and so intelligent that they can commit the perfect crime and then disappear into the shadows, leaving behind only questions that may never be answered. The case continues to haunt Los Angeles, a reminder that evil can strike anywhere, anytime, and that sometimes the most carefully planned murders are the ones that remain mysteries forever. 10. The Keddy Cabin Murders. What if a killer could enter a remote cabin, brutally murder 4 people, and then disappear without leaving a single trace, despite the presence of potential witnesses sleeping in the same building? On the 11th of April, 1981, Sue Sharp and her 5 children were spending a quiet weekend at Keddy Resort in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. The family was trying to rebuild their lives after Sue's recent divorce, and the mountain retreat seemed like the perfect place to start over. But their peaceful getaway would become the scene of one of the most brutal and baffling murders in American history. Around 8 p.m., Sue was settling in for the night in cabin 28 with her children John, Sheila, Tina, Rick, and Greg. Also staying in the cabin was John's friend Dana Wingate, who had come along for the weekend trip. 3 of the children went to bed early, while Sue, John, and Dana stayed up talking and watching television. Sometime between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., one or more intruders entered the cabin. What happened next was a massacre of unimaginable brutality. Sue Sharp, her 15-year-old son John, and his friend Dana Wingate were bound with electrical cord and medical tape, then beaten to death with a hammer and stabbed repeatedly with knives. The killer's method was as disturbing as it was efficient. The victims were tortured before being killed, and the crime scene showed evidence of a prolonged, savage attack. But the most baffling aspect of the case was that 3 of Sue's children, Rick, Greg, and a friend, were sleeping in the same cabin and were left completely unharmed. When 14-year-old Sheila Sharp returned from a sleepover the next morning, she discovered the horrific scene. Her mother, brother, and his friend were dead, but her 2 younger brothers and their friend were still asleep in the back bedroom, apparently undisturbed by the violence that had occurred just feet away. The investigation revealed that 12-year-old Tina Sharp was missing from the cabin. 3 years later, her skull was found in a remote area about 50 miles away, but the rest of her remains were never recovered. The discovery of Tina's skull raised the terrifying possibility that she had been kidnapped and held captive before being killed. Despite one of the most extensive investigations in California history, the Keddy murders remain unsolved. The killer had intimate knowledge of the cabin's layout, the family's routines, and the resort's security patterns. Multiple suspects were questioned, including local residents with connections to the Sharp family, but no arrests were ever made. The case has haunted investigators for over 40 years, representing one of the most brutal and inexplicable crimes in American history. 4 people died in the most violent circumstances imaginable, while 3 children slept peacefully in the same cabin, protected by a killer who showed them mercy for reasons that remain unknown. 11. The Beaumont children disappearance. What if 3 children could vanish from a crowded beach in broad daylight, leaving behind only a trail of witness sightings that would torment their parents and investigators for over 50 years? On the 26th of January, 1966, 9-year-old Jane Beaumont took her younger siblings, 7-year-old Anna and 4-year-old Grant, to Glenelg Beach in Adelaide, Australia. It was a routine outing that the children had made many times before, and their parents, Jim and Nancy Beaumont, expected them home by 2 p.m., but the children never returned. The Beaumont children were responsible, well-behaved, and familiar with the beach area. They had been taking this trip regularly throughout the summer, always returning home on time. But on this particular day, something went terribly wrong. Witnesses reported seeing the children at the beach around 10 a.m., playing in the water and buying ice cream. But at 11:15 a.m., several people noticed the children with a tall blonde man in his mid-30s. The man was playing with them, buying them food, and appeared to be someone they knew and trusted. The children were seen changing into their swimwear in a public facility around noon, but this was unusual because they normally wore their swimsuits under their clothes. A witness reported that the children seemed excited and happy, talking about going somewhere special with their new friend. At 12:30 p.m., the children were seen walking away from the beach with the mysterious man, heading toward the nearby shopping area. They appeared to be going willingly, even enthusiastically, suggesting that the man had gained their complete trust in just a few hours. The last confirmed sighting was at 1:15 p.m., when a witness saw the children with the man near a building site about half a mile from the beach. After that, they vanished completely. Despite the largest search operation in Australian history, involving thousands of volunteers and police officers, no trace of the children was ever found. The case became a national obsession, generating thousands of tips and dozens of suspects. But the most disturbing aspect was how quickly and completely the children had been won over by a stranger. In just a few hours, someone had gained their trust so completely that they willingly left the safety of the beach to go somewhere with him. The Beaumont children disappearance changed Australia forever, ending the era of childhood innocence and freedom. Parents became afraid to let their children play unsupervised. and the case became a cautionary tale about stranger danger. But the mystery remains unsolved, a reminder that predators can be charming, trustworthy, and so skilled at manipulation that they can convince children to walk away from safety and into danger, leaving behind only questions that may never be answered. 12. The Setagaya family murders. What if a killer could spend hours in a family home after brutally murdering all 4 occupants, calmly eating their food, using their computer, and leaving behind evidence that would both fascinate and terrify investigators for decades? On the 30th of December 2000, the Miyazawa family was preparing for New Year's celebrations in their quiet Tokyo suburb of Setagaya. Mikio Miyazawa, 44, his wife Yasuko, 41, their 8-year-old daughter Niina, and 6-year-old son Rei were spending a peaceful evening at home, unaware that a killer was already planning their deaths. The intruder entered the house through a bathroom window on the 2nd floor around 11:30 p.m. But this wasn't a quick robbery or a crime of passion. It was a methodical massacre that would reveal the mind of one of the most calculating killers in Japanese history. The killer first encountered Mikio on the 2nd floor and stabbed him to death. When Yasuko tried to call for help, the killer caught her and killed her as well. The children, awakened by the commotion, were also murdered, but the killer's work was just beginning. After murdering the family, the killer spent the next 10 hours in the house, behaving as if it were his own home. He ate ice cream from the freezer, drank tea, and treated his wounds with the family's medical supplies. Most disturbing of all, he used the family's computer to browse the internet, accessing websites and sending emails as if nothing had happened. The killer's behavior after the murders was as methodical as the crimes themselves. He changed into Mikio's clothes, took a nap on the family's couch, and even used their toilet. He left behind a trail of evidence that was both extensive and baffling. DNA evidence revealed that the killer was of mixed Asian and European heritage, but despite having one of the most complete genetic profiles in criminal history, he has never been identified. The killer also left behind a distinctive knife, unusual clothing, and personal items that investigators have traced around the world, but these leads have never resulted in an arrest. The most chilling aspect of the case was the killer's complete comfort in the house after the murders. He moved through the home as if he belonged there, using the family's possessions and eating their food while their bodies lay nearby. This wasn't someone who killed in a moment of rage or panic. This was someone who could commit murder and then relax in the aftermath. The Setagaya family murders remain one of Japan's most infamous unsolved cases, a reminder that some killers are so cold and calculating that they can take 4 lives and then spend hours in comfort, surrounded by the evidence of their crimes, before disappearing into the night as if nothing had happened. 13. The Tamam Shud case. What if a man could die under the most mysterious circumstances imaginable, carrying with him a secret code that has remained unbroken for over 70 years, despite the efforts of the world's best cryptographers? On the 1st of December, 1948, a man was found dead on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. He was well dressed, appeared to be in excellent health, and showed no signs of violence. But this seemingly straightforward case would evolve into one of the most perplexing mysteries in forensic history. The man carried no identification, and all labels had been carefully removed from his clothing. His fingerprints matched no records anywhere in the world. Dental records led nowhere. It was as if he had simply materialized on the beach without any past or identity. The autopsy revealed that the man had died from heart failure, but toxicology tests found no traces of poison or drugs that could explain his death. However, the pathologist noted unusual symptoms that suggested he had been poisoned by a substance that left no trace in the body. 6 months later, investigators found a small piece of paper hidden in a secret pocket of the man's trousers. On it were printed the words Tamam Shud, meaning ended or finished in Persian. The paper was traced to a specific page torn from a rare collection of poems called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The book was eventually found in the back seat of a car parked near the beach. Inside, investigators discovered a phone number and a series of letters written in pencil, Wergobabbed, followed by another line that had been crossed out. This code has been studied by cryptographers, linguists, and intelligence agencies for over 70 years, but it remains unbroken. The phone number led to a woman named Jessica Thompson, who became visibly shaken when shown a photograph of the dead man. She denied knowing him, but investigations revealed that she had connections to intelligence operations and had lived in areas where the man might have been stationed. Recent DNA analysis has revealed that the Somerton man was likely an American with European ancestry, but his identity remains unknown. The case has spawned theories involving Cold War espionage, lost love affairs, and international intrigue, but none adequately explain how a man could die so mysteriously and leave behind only a coded message that may never be solved. The Tamam Shud case represents one of the most perfect mysteries in criminal history. A man without an identity, a death without a cause, and a code without a solution, all wrapped together in a puzzle that has defied explanation for over 7 decades. 14. The Oakville Blobs. What if a rainstorm could bring down something so bizarre and unexplained that it would make an entire town sick and leave scientists baffled for decades? On the 7th of August, 1994, the residents of Oakville, Washington, woke up to what they thought was a normal rainstorm. But instead of water, gelatinous blobs about the size of rice grains were falling from the sky, covering everything in a thick, gooey layer that looked like clear jelly. Sunny Barclift was one of the first to notice something was wrong. She was outside when the rain began and immediately realized that whatever was falling wasn't water. The blobs were translucent, had a musty odor, and felt rubbery to the touch. When she tried to hose them off her driveway, they wouldn't wash away. Within hours, people throughout Oakville began getting sick. Residents reported flu-like symptoms, including nausea, dizziness, and difficulty breathing. Sunny Barclift's mother became so ill that she had to be hospitalized. The local emergency room was overwhelmed with people suffering from similar symptoms. The Washington State Department of Health was called in to investigate. They collected samples of the mysterious blobs and sent them to laboratories for analysis. The results were disturbing and inexplicable. The laboratory analysis revealed that the blobs contained human white blood cells, but no red blood cells. They also contained bacteria typically found in the digestive systems of humans, but in concentrations that shouldn't exist in nature. Most baffling of all, the blobs contained cells that appeared to be reproducing, even though they showed no signs of conventional biological life. The official explanation was that the blobs were the result of a military test involving the disposal of biological waste, but the military denied any involvement. Other theories suggested that the blobs were created by aircraft dumping waste at high altitude, but this couldn't explain the presence of human cells or the biological activity. The most disturbing aspect of the case was that the blobs appeared to be semi-alive. Under microscopic examination, they showed signs of cellular activity and reproduction, but they didn't match any known biological organism. They seemed to exist in a state between living and non-living matter. The Oakville blobs fell 6 times over a period of 3 weeks, always during rainstorms, and always with the same mysterious composition. After the 6th incident, they stopped appearing altogether, as if whatever was causing them had simply turned off. To this day, no one knows what the Oakville blobs were, where they came from, or why they made people sick. The case remains one of the most bizarre and unexplained phenomena in modern history, a reminder that sometimes the sky can rain down mysteries that science cannot explain. 15. The Tunguska Event. What if an explosion more powerful than 1,000 atomic bombs could level 2,000 square kilometers of forest without leaving behind a single fragment of evidence about what caused it? On the 30th of June, 1908, at 7:17 a.m., something exploded over the remote Tunguska region of Siberia, with a force that was felt around the world. The explosion was so powerful that it knocked down an estimated 80 million trees, created seismic waves that registered on instruments across Europe, and produced atmospheric disturbances that were visible as far away as London. Witnesses hundreds of miles away reported seeing a brilliant blue light streaking across the sky, followed by a blast so loud that it shattered windows and knocked people off their feet. The explosion was equivalent to 10 to 15 multigigatons of TNT, making it the largest impact event in recorded human history. But when investigators finally reached the remote site in 1927, they found something that defied all explanation. There was no crater, no meteorite fragments, and no evidence of what had caused the explosion. The trees were flattened in a radial pattern extending outward from the epicenter, but at ground zero, the trees were still standing, stripped of their branches and leaves. The lack of physical evidence has made the Tunguska event one of the most debated mysteries in science. If a meteorite had exploded in the atmosphere, there should have been fragments scattered across the landscape. If it had been a comet, there should have been ice and dust particles, but investigators found nothing. The explosion pattern was unlike anything ever recorded. The trees were knocked down in a perfect radial pattern, as if the explosion had occurred at a specific altitude and expanded outward with mathematical precision. But the area directly beneath the explosion was relatively undamaged, suggesting that the force had been directed outward rather than downward. Recent scientific analysis has proposed that the explosion was caused by a stony asteroid that completely vaporized in the atmosphere, but this theory still can't explain all the evidence. The lack of impact crater, the unusual atmospheric effects, and the precise pattern of destruction continue to puzzle scientists. The Tunguska event remains one of the most powerful and mysterious explosions in human history, a reminder that our planet is constantly under threat from cosmic forces that we barely understand and may never be able to predict or prevent. 16. The Voynich manuscript. What if someone created a book so mysterious and complex that it would baffle linguists, historians, and cryptographers for over 600 years, remaining completely unreadable despite the efforts of the world's greatest minds? The Voynich manuscript is a 240-page book written in the early 15th century, filled with bizarre illustrations and text in a language that no one has ever been able to decipher. The manuscript contains detailed drawings of unknown plants, astronomical charts, and human figures, all accompanied by text in a script that appears to be a complete language system. The book was discovered in 1912 by antique book dealer Wilfrid Voynich in an Italian monastery. Carbon dating has confirmed that the manuscript was created between 1404 and 1438, but its author and purpose remain completely unknown. The text of the manuscript appears to follow linguistic rules and patterns, suggesting that it represents a real language rather than gibberish. Statistical analysis shows that the text has the complexity and structure of natural language, with repeated words, grammatical patterns, and even what appear to be chapter divisions. But the most baffling aspect of the manuscript is its illustrations. The botanical section contains detailed drawings of plants that don't match any known species. The astronomical section includes charts and diagrams that don't correspond to any known celestial phenomena. The biological section shows human figures in scenarios that appear to be related to reproduction or medicine, but in ways that make no anatomical sense. The manuscript has been studied by the world's leading cryptographers, including teams from the NSA and CIA. Computer analysis has been applied to the text, searching for patterns, codes, and linguistic structures. But despite centuries of effort, no one has been able to read a single word of the manuscript. Some experts believe the manuscript is an elaborate hoax, created by someone with extensive knowledge of multiple scientific disciplines. Others think it might be the work of a brilliant but mentally ill individual who created their own language and mythology. Still, others suggest that it could be a genuine scientific text from an unknown civilization or time period. The Voynich manuscript represents one of the most perfect mysteries in human history, a book that appears to contain vast amounts of knowledge, but in a form that remains completely inaccessible to modern understanding. It's a reminder that some secrets are so well hidden that they may never be revealed, no matter how advanced our technology becomes. 17. The WOW signal. What if we received a signal from space so powerful and unusual that it could only have come from an intelligent extraterrestrial source, but it appeared for just 72 seconds and then vanished forever? On the 15th of August, 1977, Dr. Jerry Eman was reviewing data from the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University when he noticed something that made him write, "Wow," in red ink on the computer printout. The telescope had detected a strong narrowband radio signal that lasted for exactly 72 seconds and then disappeared. The signal was remarkable for several reasons. It was transmitted at a frequency of 1,420 megahertz, the same frequency emitted by neutral hydrogen atoms, a frequency that scientists have long believed would be used by extraterrestrial civilizations trying to communicate because it's universally recognized throughout the prostomer universe. The signal was incredibly strong, about 30 times more powerful than the background noise of space. It appeared to come from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, but its exact location couldn't be pinpointed because the Big Ear telescope could only determine direction within a broad area. Most importantly, the signal showed all the characteristics of an artificial transmission. It was narrowband, meaning it was concentrated at a specific frequency rather than spread across a wide range. It was also modulated in a way that suggested it carried information, though the content couldn't be decoded from the brief transmission. The Big Ear telescope continued to monitor the same area of sky for months and years afterward, but the signal never repeated. Other radio telescopes around the world were directed toward the same region, but none ever detected anything similar. The WOW signal has become the most famous candidate for extraterrestrial communication in the history of SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Its characteristics are exactly what scientists would expect from an artificial transmission from an advanced civilization trying to make contact. Despite decades of analysis and investigation, no natural explanation has been found for the WOW signal. It wasn't a satellite, aircraft, or any known astronomical phenomenon. The signal appeared to come from deep space, transmitted with enormous power, and then vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. The WOW signal remains one of the most tantalizing mysteries in astronomy, a 72-second transmission that might have been humanity's first contact with an extraterrestrial civilization, a message from the cosmos that we received but will never hear again. 18. The Antikythera mechanism. What if ancient Greeks possessed technology so advanced that it wouldn't be rediscovered until the 20th century, challenging everything we thought we knew about the development of human civilization? In 1901, sponge divers discovered a Roman shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera. Among the statues and pottery was a corroded bronze object that would revolutionize our understanding of ancient technology. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, is a complex clockwork device that dates back over 2,000 years. Initial examination revealed that the mechanism contained dozens of precisely crafted bronze gears, dials, and inscriptions. But it took decades of study before scientists realized what they were looking at: an ancient analog computer of unprecedented sophistication. The device was designed to calculate the positions of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable accuracy. It could predict eclipses, track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, and even account for the irregular orbit of the moon. The level of astronomical knowledge required to build such a device was thought to be impossible for ancient Greeks. The mechanism contains at least 82 fragments with more than 2,000 characters of Greek text. The inscriptions reveal that it was essentially an instruction manual for predicting celestial events, written in a scientific language that demonstrates advanced mathematical concepts. But the most astounding aspect of the Antikythera mechanism is its mechanical complexity. The bronze gears are cut with precision that rivals modern machining, and the device uses differential gearing, a technology that wasn't thought to have been invented until the 18th century. X-ray analysis has revealed that the mechanism contained far more gears than initially thought, with some estimates suggesting it had over 100 precision-crafted components. The device was essentially a mechanical computer that could perform complex calculations automatically. The existence of the Antikythera mechanism suggests that ancient Greek technology was far more advanced than historians had believed. It represents a level of mechanical engineering that wouldn't be seen again until the Renaissance, over 1,000 years later. The mechanism raises profound questions about lost knowledge and forgotten civilizations. If the Greeks could build such sophisticated devices, what other technologies might have been lost to history? The Antikythera mechanism is a reminder that human innovation has always been more advanced than we imagine, and that some of our greatest discoveries might actually be rediscoveries of ancient knowledge. 19. The Shroud of Turin. What if a piece of cloth could bear the image of a crucified man in such detail and with such mysterious properties that it would challenge both science and faith for over 700 years? The Shroud of Turin is a 14-foot-long linen cloth that bears the faint image of a crucified man. The image shows incredible anatomical detail, including wounds consistent with crucifixion, and appears to be a photographic negative, meaning it becomes more realistic when the colors are reversed. The cloth first appeared in historical records in the 14th century, but its true origins remain a mystery. Radiocarbon dating performed in 1988 suggested the cloth was created between 1260 and 1390 AD, but this dating has been challenged by numerous subsequent studies. The image on the shroud is unlike anything else in the world. It wasn't painted. Microscopic analysis shows no evidence of paint, dyes, or any known artistic medium. The image appears to be formed by a discoloration of the linen fibers themselves, but no one knows how this discoloration occurred. The anatomical accuracy of the image is remarkable. The wounds are consistent with Roman crucifixion practices, including details about nail placement and scourging patterns that weren't known to medieval forgers. The image shows knowledge of human anatomy that was far advanced for its time. Most mysteriously, the image appears to contain three-dimensional information. When analyzed by computer programs designed to create topographical maps, the shroud produces a realistic three-dimensional representation of a human body, something that no known artistic technique can achieve. The shroud also contains traces of pollen from plants that grow only in the Middle East, suggesting that the cloth spent time in that region. Some of these plants bloom only during the spring months, consistent with the timing of the crucifixion. Recent analysis has revealed that the image was created by some form of radiation or energy burst that was powerful enough to discolor the linen fibers, but brief enough to create only a surface image. This process is beyond the capabilities of medieval technology and remains unexplained by modern science. The Shroud of Turin represents one of the most studied and controversial artifacts in history. Whether it's a genuine relic from the crucifixion or the work of an unknown medieval genius, it demonstrates capabilities that shouldn't have existed when it was created, making it a mystery that continues to challenge our understanding of both history and science. 20. The Hessdalen Lights. What if a remote Norwegian valley became the site of unexplained lights that appear with such regularity that scientists have set up permanent monitoring stations to study them, yet still cannot explain what they are? The Hessdalen Valley in Norway has been the site of unexplained light phenomena since the 1980s. The lights appear as glowing orbs, flashing objects, and structured craft that move through the sky with apparent intelligence and purpose. The phenomena first gained attention in 1981 when residents began reporting strange lights appearing in the valley with increasing frequency. The lights would appear several times a week, sometimes lasting for hours, and displayed behaviors that couldn't be explained by conventional aircraft or natural phenomena. In 1984, Project Hessdalen was established to study the lights scientifically. The project has maintained permanent monitoring stations equipped with cameras, radar, and spectrometers, making it one of the most comprehensive studies of unexplained phenomena ever conducted. The lights display a wide variety of behaviors. Some appear as stationary orbs that hover in place for hours. Others move at incredible speeds, making sudden turns and changes in direction that would be impossible for conventional aircraft. Some appear to respond to the presence of observers, dimming or brightening when cameras are pointed at them. Spectroscopic analysis has revealed that the lights emit specific wavelengths of light that don't match any known natural phenomena. The lights appear to be composed of ionized gases, but the energy source that creates and maintains these plasmas remains unknown. The most intriguing aspect of the Hessdalen lights is their apparent intelligence. They seem to follow patterns, appear at specific locations, and respond to human presence in ways that suggest they are controlled by some form of intelligence, rather than being random natural phenomena. Multiple independent scientific teams have studied the lights, and all have confirmed their existence and unusual properties. The phenomena have been photographed, filmed, and tracked on radar, providing extensive documentation of their reality. The Hessdalen lights represent one of the most well-documented and scientifically studied unexplained phenomena in the world. Despite decades of investigation by qualified scientists using sophisticated equipment, no conventional explanation has been found for the lights or their behavior. The valley continues to produce unexplained lights on a regular basis, making it a unique laboratory for studying phenomena that challenge our understanding of physics and the nature of reality itself. 21. The bloop. What if the deepest parts of our oceans produced sounds so loud and mysterious that they could be heard across thousands of miles, suggesting the existence of creatures larger than any known animal? In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, detected an ultra-low frequency sound emanating from the depths of the Pacific Ocean. The sound, dubbed the bloop, was one of the loudest underwater sounds ever recorded, powerful enough to be detected by sensors located over 3,000 miles apart. The bloop was detected by the US Navy's Sound Surveillance System, a network of underwater listening posts originally designed to track Soviet submarines during the Cold War. The sound was so powerful and unusual that it immediately attracted the attention of marine biologists and acoustic experts. The sound profile of the bloop was unlike anything previously recorded. It consisted of a rapid increase in frequency over about 1 minute, creating a distinctive blooping sound when played back at increased speed. The sound appeared to originate from a location in the South Pacific, approximately 1,500 miles west of Chile. What made the bloop particularly mysterious was its acoustic signature. While it resembled the sounds made by living creatures, it would have required an animal far larger than any known species to produce such a powerful sound. The largest known animal, the blue whale, produces sounds that are loud but nowhere near the intensity of the bloop. Marine biologists were fascinated by the possibility that the bloop might have been produced by an unknown deep-sea creature. The deep ocean remains largely unexplored, and it's possible that giant species exist in the deepest trenches without being discovered by science. The sound was detected several times throughout the summer of 1997, always from the same general area of the Pacific. But after that summer, the bloop was never heard again, despite continuous monitoring of the area. In 2005, NOAA announced that they had identified the source of the bloop as the sound of massive icebergs fracturing and breaking away from Antarctica. The acoustic signature, they explained, was consistent with the sounds produced by glacial movements and ice carving. However, many researchers remain skeptical of this explanation. The sound profile of the bloop doesn't perfectly match known ice-related sounds, and the location where it was detected is far from the Antarctic ice sheet. Some scientists continue to believe that the bloop represents evidence of unknown deep-sea life forms. The bloop remains one of the most mysterious sounds ever recorded from the ocean depths, a reminder that our planet's oceans still hold secrets that we may never fully understand. 22. The Nazca Lines. What if an ancient civilization created massive drawings in the desert that could only be fully appreciated from the air, centuries before human flight was possible? The Nazca Lines are a series of massive geoglyphs located in the Nazca Desert of Peru, created by the Nazca culture between 500 BC and 500 AD. The lines form enormous pictures of animals, plants, and geometric shapes that can only be fully seen from the air, some spanning over 1,000 feet in length. The geoglyphs were created by removing the dark surface stones of the desert to reveal the lighter-colored earth beneath. The dry, windless climate of the Nazca Desert has preserved these markings for over 1,500 years, making them one of the most remarkable archaeological sites in the world. The lines include depictions of a spider, a monkey, a hummingbird, and dozens of other animals and plants. There are also hundreds of geometric shapes, including straight lines that extend for miles across the desert plateau. The precision and scale of these drawings is extraordinary, especially considering they were created without the benefit of aerial perspective. What makes the Nazca Lines particularly mysterious is their purpose. The lines are too large to be appreciated from ground level, yet they were created by a culture that had no known method of flight. How did the Nazca people plan and execute such massive, precise drawings without being able to see them from above? Some theories suggest that the lines were created as offerings to the gods, visible only from the heavens. Others propose that they served as a giant astronomical calendar, with different lines pointing to celestial events. Still, others believe they were pathways for religious processions or markers for underground water sources. The most controversial theory suggests that the Nazca Lines were created with the help of extraterrestrial visitors who could view them from aircraft. This theory gained popularity in the 1960s, but has been largely dismissed by mainstream archaeology. Recent research has revealed that the Nazca lines are even more complex than previously thought. New lines are still being discovered using satellite imagery and drone technology, and some of the figures are so large that they weren't recognized until viewed from space. The mathematical precision of the lines is remarkable. Many of the straight lines are perfectly straight for miles, created with an accuracy that would be challenging even with modern surveying equipment. The animal figures are drawn with anatomical precision and artistic skill that demonstrates sophisticated knowledge of both art and engineering. The Nazca lines remain one of the most impressive achievements of ancient civilization, a testament to human creativity and engineering capability that continues to challenge our understanding of what was possible in the ancient world. 23. The Taos hum. What if a small town could be plagued by a mysterious sound that only some people can hear, driving them to desperation while others remain completely unaware of its existence? Since the early 1990s, residents of Taos, New Mexico, have been reporting a persistent, low-frequency humming sound that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The sound, known as the Taos hum, has been described as resembling a diesel engine idling in the distance, but no source has ever been identified. The Taos hum affects only about 2% of the population, but for those who hear it, the sound is constant and maddening. Sufferers report that the hum is louder at night, more noticeable indoors, and impossible to escape. Some have described it as feeling like the sound is coming from inside their heads, rather than from an external source. The sound has driven some residents to desperation. People have sold their homes and moved away from Taos, unable to cope with the constant noise. Others have reported health problems, including headaches, dizziness, and sleep disorders that they attribute to the hum. In 1997, Congress directed scientists to investigate the Taos hum. A team of researchers from Los Alamos National Laboratory, the University of New Mexico, and other institutions conducted an extensive study. They used sophisticated acoustic equipment to search for the source of the sound but found nothing. The investigation revealed that the hum could not be detected by sensitive microphones or acoustic equipment. Whatever the affected residents were hearing, it wasn't producing measurable sound waves in the environment. This discovery made the mystery even more perplexing. Various theories have been proposed to explain the Taos hum. Some suggest it's caused by electromagnetic radiation from military installations, underground mining operations, or atmospheric phenomena. Others propose that it's a form of tinnitus, triggered by environmental factors unique to the Taos area. The most intriguing theory suggests that the hum is related to very low-frequency sound waves that are below the normal range of human hearing, but can still be perceived by some individuals. These infrasound waves could be generated by geological activity, weather patterns, or man-made sources. Similar hums have been reported in other locations around the world, including Bristol, England, and Kokomo, Indiana. In some cases, the source has been identified as industrial equipment or natural phenomena, but in others, including Taos, the mystery remains unsolved. The Taos hum represents one of the most studied acoustic mysteries in modern times. Despite extensive scientific investigation, the source of the sound remains unknown, and the suffering of those who hear it continues, making it a reminder that some phenomena exist at the very limits of our ability to perceive and understand the world around us. 24. The Babushka Lady. What if someone at the scene of President Kennedy's assassination possessed crucial evidence about the crime but vanished into history, leaving behind only a tantalizing glimpse of what they might have recorded? On the 22nd of November, 1963, as President John F. Kennedy's motorcade moved through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. Dozens of photographers and amateur filmmakers were capturing what would become one of the most analyzed moments in American history. But one mysterious figure would haunt investigators for decades. In the famous Zapruder film and numerous photographs of the assassination, a woman can be seen standing across the street from the grassy knoll, wearing a brown overcoat and a headscarf tied under her chin in the style of a Russian babushka. She appears to be holding a camera up to her face, filming the presidential motorcade. What makes the Babushka Lady so mysterious is that she continued filming even after the shots were fired. While everyone else in Dealey Plaza was diving for cover, running away, or standing in shock, she remained in position, apparently continuing to record the chaos that followed the assassination. The woman was clearly visible in multiple photographs and films, but despite extensive investigation by the FBI and private researchers, she was never identified. Even more mysteriously, no film or photographs from her camera have ever surfaced, despite numerous public appeals and the enormous historical value such evidence would have. The FBI conducted one of the most extensive investigations in American history following the assassination, interviewing thousands of witnesses and examining every piece of evidence they could find. But the babushka lady seemed to have vanished completely, leaving no trace of her identity or her film. Several women have claimed to be the babushka lady over the years, but none of their stories have been verified. The most prominent claimant was Beverly Oliver, who came forward in the 1970s claiming to have been the mysterious woman. However, her story contained numerous inconsistencies and was never accepted by serious researchers. The mystery deepened when analysis of the photographic evidence revealed that the woman appeared to be using a sophisticated camera, possibly a professional-grade movie camera. This suggested that she might have been a journalist, government agent, or someone else with access to expensive equipment. The babushka lady's position in Dealey Plaza would have given her a unique vantage point of the assassination. Her film could potentially have captured crucial evidence about the direction of the shots, the reactions of the crowd, and other details that might have solved the case. The fact that her film has never surfaced has led to numerous conspiracy theories. Some suggest that she was a government agent whose film was immediately confiscated and classified. Others believe that she was threatened or eliminated to prevent her evidence from coming to light. The babushka lady remains one of the most intriguing mysteries surrounding the Kennedy assassination, a reminder that even the most documented events in history can still contain secrets that may never be revealed. 25. The Kecksburg UFO Incident. What if a UFO crashed in a small Pennsylvania town in 1965 and the military immediately cordoned off the area and removed all evidence, leaving behind only witness testimony and decades of unanswered questions? On the 9th of December, 1965, a fireball was seen streaking across the sky over 6 US states and Canada. The object was tracked by radar and observed by thousands of witnesses. But what happened when it crashed near the small town of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, would become one of the most controversial UFO cases in American history. Witnesses reported that the object changed direction during its flight, ruling out the possibility that it was a meteor or space debris. The object appeared to be under intelligent control, slowing down and maneuvering as it descended toward the Earth. The object crashed in a wooded area near Kecksburg around 4:45 p.m. Local residents who reached the crash site before authorities arrived reported seeing a bronze-colored, acorn-shaped object about the size of a car. The object was partially buried in the ground and appeared to be intact. Most intriguingly, witnesses reported seeing strange symbols around the base of the object, resembling hieroglyphics or some form of unknown writing. The object was reportedly warm to the touch and emitted a blue-green light. Within hours of the crash, the area was cordoned off by military personnel. Witnesses reported seeing army trucks, jeeps, and a flatbed trailer arrive at the scene. The military ordered all civilians to leave the area and established a perimeter around the crash site. Late that night, witnesses reported seeing a large object covered by a tarp being loaded onto a flatbed truck and driven away under heavy military escort. The truck was reportedly headed toward Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, a facility known for its involvement in UFO investigations. The next day, military officials denied that anything had crashed near Kecksburg. They claimed that the object seen in the sky was a meteor that had burned up in the atmosphere. But witnesses who had seen the object on the ground knew this explanation was false. The case gained national attention when local reporter John Murphy began investigating the incident. Murphy conducted interviews with witnesses and attempted to get information from military officials, but he was reportedly warned to stop his investigation. Shortly after, Murphy died under suspicious circumstances, and his research files disappeared. Decades later, documents released through the Freedom of Information Act revealed that the military had indeed recovered something from the Kecksburg crash site. The documents, heavily redacted, mentioned an object of unknown origin that was transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for analysis. The Kecksburg UFO incident remains one of the most compelling cases in UFO history, with credible witnesses, physical evidence, and military involvement all pointing to the recovery of something extraordinary that the government has never been willing to discuss publicly. 26. The Mothman Prophecies. What if a town could be visited by a creature so terrifying and prophetic that its appearances would predict a disaster that would kill 46 people exactly 13 months later? In November 1966, residents of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, began reporting encounters with a creature unlike anything in the natural world. The being was described as humanoid but massive, standing over 7 feet tall with enormous wings and glowing red eyes the size of dinner plates. The first official sighting occurred on the 12th of November, 1966, when 5 men digging a grave in a cemetery near Clendenin reported seeing a large winged creature flying overhead. 3 days later, 2 young couples were driving near the abandoned West Virginia Ordnance Works when they encountered the creature. Roger and Linda Scarberry, along with Steve and Mary Millette, reported that the creature chased their car at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. The being kept pace with their vehicle despite the high speed, and its red eyes seemed to hypnotize the witnesses with their intense glow. Over the following months, more than 100 people reported sightings of the creature, which journalists dubbed Mothman. The encounters followed a consistent pattern. The creature would appear suddenly, usually near the abandoned munitions plant, and would stare at witnesses with its terrifying red eyes before disappearing into the night. But the Mothman sightings were accompanied by other strange phenomena. Residents reported mysterious phone calls, television and radio interference, and encounters with strange men in black suits who asked questions about the creature's sightings. The entire town seemed to be under some form of supernatural surveillance. The most disturbing aspect of the Mothman encounters was that witnesses began reporting prophetic dreams and visions. People who had seen the creature reported having nightmares about disasters, particularly involving bridges and large numbers of casualties. The sightings continued for exactly 13 months, culminating on the 15th of December, 1967, when the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed during rush hour traffic. The bridge failure killed 46 people and injured dozens more, exactly as some witnesses had predicted after their Mothman encounters. After the bridge collapse, the Mothman sightings stopped completely. The creature that had terrorized Point Pleasant for over a year vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, as if its mission had been completed. The Mothman case was investigated by journalist John Keel, who documented the encounters in his book, The Mothman Prophecies. Keel's investigation revealed that the creature sightings were part of a larger pattern of paranormal activity that included UFO sightings, poltergeist phenomena, and encounters with mysterious entities. The Mothman remains one of the most famous cryptid cases in American history, but what sets it apart from other monster sightings is the apparent connection between the creature's appearances and the tragic bridge collapse that followed. Whether the Mothman was trying to warn the town of impending disaster or was somehow connected to the catastrophe remains a mystery that continues to fascinate researchers and believers alike. 27. The Marfa Lights. What if mysterious lights in the Texas desert have been appearing for over 140 years, defying every attempt at scientific explanation and continuing to perplex observers with their seemingly intelligent behavior? Since 1883, residents and visitors to Marfa, Texas, have reported seeing strange lights appearing in the desert east of town. The lights, which appear almost nightly, have been described as orbs of various colors that move across the landscape in patterns that seem to suggest intelligence. The first documented sighting was by a young cowhand named Robert Reed Ellison in 1883. Ellison reported seeing lights in the distance that he initially thought were campfires, but as he watched, the lights began moving in ways that campfires never could. The Marfa lights typically appear as glowing orbs that range in color from white to yellow to red. They can appear singly or in groups, and they exhibit behaviors that are unlike any known natural phenomenon. The lights split apart and merge together, change colors, move in geometric patterns, and seem to respond to the presence of observers. What makes the Marfa lights particularly mysterious is their apparent intelligence. Observers report that the lights seem to play games, responding to flashlights by mimicking their patterns, and even appearing to dance or perform for audiences. Some witnesses claim that the lights have followed them or appeared to communicate through their movements. The lights have been investigated by numerous scientists, skeptics, and paranormal researchers, but no conclusive explanation has been found. Various theories have been proposed, including atmospheric reflections, piezoelectric effects from shifting underground rocks, and even electromagnetic phenomena related to the area's geology. The most common skeptical explanation is that the lights are simply the headlights of cars on a distant highway, but this theory fails to account for several key facts. The lights were reported for decades before automobiles existed in the area. They appear in locations where no roads exist, and they exhibit behaviors that are impossible for vehicle headlights. The lights have been captured on film and video numerous times, but they remain as mysterious as ever. Some footage shows the lights performing impossible maneuvers, such as right-angle turns at high speed, sudden acceleration and deceleration, and the ability to appear and disappear instantaneously. The Marfa lights have been featured in numerous documentaries and television shows, but they continue to appear regularly regardless of the attention they receive. The phenomenon has become so well known that the town of Marfa has built a special viewing area for tourists who come to witness the lights. The lights represent one of the most persistent and well-documented unexplained phenomena in the United States. Despite over 140 years of sightings and decades of scientific investigation, the Marfa lights remain as mysterious as ever, continuing to appear nightly in the Texas desert like clockwork, challenging our understanding of what's possible in the natural world. Story 28. The Vanishing Village of Hoa Verde. In 1923, an entire Brazilian village of 600 people disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only one terrifying message. The village of Hoa Verde was discovered completely empty by a team of researchers, with meals still warm on tables and livestock wandering freely through the streets. Every single resident had vanished simultaneously, as if they had simply stepped out of existence. The only clue to their fate was a crude sign hammered into the ground at the village centre, written in Portuguese. "There is no salvation." The Brazilian government classified the incident and sealed all records, but witnesses reported finding children's toys scattered in perfect circles around the village perimeter, arranged in patterns that seemed to follow no earthly logic. What force could make 600 people vanish in unison, leaving behind only a warning that chills investigators to this day? The case remains one of Brazil's most closely guarded secrets, with the village site now permanently off-limits to civilians. Story 29. The Screaming Mummy of Guanajuato. Deep in the catacombs of Guanajuato, Mexico, lies a mummy whose expression of pure terror has haunted visitors for over a century. The mummy, known as La Momia Cagrita, or the Screaming Mummy, was discovered in 1865 with her mouth frozen open in an eternal scream, her face contorted in absolute horror. But this wasn't just any preserved corpse. Analysis revealed she had been buried alive, her fingernails torn and bloodied from clawing at her coffin lid. The woman, identified as Ignacia Aguilar, had been mistakenly declared dead during a cholera epidemic and buried while still breathing. Her family heard her screams from beneath the earth but arrived too late to save her. When her body was exhumed years later due to unpaid grave fees, workers found her twisted in an impossible position, having died in agony trying to escape her premature burial. The mummy's terrified expression was so disturbing that it became a macabre tourist attraction, but visitors report feeling overwhelming dread when viewing her remains. Her scream seems to echo through the catacombs, a permanent reminder of one of humanity's most primal fears, being buried alive. Story 30. The Possession of Anneliese Michel. In 1975, a 23-year-old German woman named Anneliese Michel died after months of exorcism rituals that were recorded on tape, creating some of the most disturbing audio evidence of alleged demonic possession ever captured. Anneliese, a devout Catholic, began experiencing seizures and hallucinations, claiming to see demonic faces and hear voices commanding her to perform blasphemous acts. As her condition worsened, she refused to eat, spoke in ancient languages she had never learned, and demonstrated impossible physical strength. Her family, convinced she was possessed by demons, authorized a series of exorcisms performed by 2 priests over 10 months. The audio recordings from these sessions capture Anneliese speaking in multiple distinct voices, including those claiming to be Hitler, Judas Iscariot, and various demons. Her voice would change completely, becoming deep and menacing, speaking in Latin and other languages with perfect pronunciation. She would bark like a dog, hiss like a snake, and describe visions of hell in terrifying detail. The recordings reveal her physical deterioration, as she refused food for weeks, convinced that demons were preventing her from eating. She died weighing only 68 pounds, her body covered in self-inflicted wounds from her violent convulsions. The exorcism tapes remain some of the most chilling evidence in the debate between mental illness and supernatural possession, with experts still unable to explain how she acquired knowledge of ancient languages or demonstrated such unusual physical abilities. Story 31. The Byford Dolphin Incident. In 1983, a routine decompression procedure on the Byford Dolphin oil rig went catastrophically wrong, resulting in one of the most horrific industrial accidents ever recorded. 5 men died instantly when a diving bell was accidentally disconnected from its pressurized chamber, causing explosive decompression that happened so fast it defied human comprehension. The accident occurred when the diving bell was at 300 feet underwater, maintaining pressure equivalent to 9 times normal atmospheric pressure. When the connection was severed, the men inside were subjected to a pressure differential that changed their bodies from the inside out in milliseconds. The official accident report describes injuries so severe they challenge the limits of human imagination, bodies literally blown apart by the internal pressure differential. One victim was found compressed into a space barely 24 inches wide, his body forced through an opening smaller than his head. The scene was so traumatic that rescue workers required psychological counseling, and the oil rig was shut down for months while investigators tried to understand what had happened. The incident led to complete overhauls of deep-sea diving safety protocols, but the images and testimonies from that day remain classified to protect the mental health of those who might see them. The Byford Dolphin accident stands as a stark reminder of the invisible forces that can destroy human life in ways too terrible to fully comprehend. Story 32. The Overtoun Bridge Dog Suicides. Since the 1950s, dogs have been mysteriously leaping to their deaths from the Overtoun Bridge in Scotland, with over 600 documented cases and no scientific explanation. The Gothic stone bridge, built in 1895, has become known as Dog Suicide Bridge, after decades of animals inexplicably jumping from the same exact spot on the right side of the bridge. The dogs show no signs of distress before the jump. They simply walk calmly to a specific point, then leap over the 50-foot drop to the rocks below. What makes this phenomenon even more disturbing is that the dogs that survive the fall often return to the bridge and jump again, as if compelled by an invisible force. Local veterinarians and animal behaviorists have studied the bridge extensively, testing theories about scent trails, acoustic anomalies, and visual triggers, but none explain why dogs would suddenly abandon their survival instincts. The jumps always occur in clear weather, always from the same location, and always involve long-nosed breeds like collies and golden retrievers. Celtic folklore suggests the bridge is built on a thin place where the supernatural world bleeds through to our reality, and locals report that the bridge has an oppressive atmosphere that affects humans as well. Some visitors describe feeling an overwhelming urge to jump, while others report hearing voices calling from below. The most chilling aspect is that the dog's behavior is completely out of character. Loving family pets that have never shown suicidal tendencies will suddenly become fixated on reaching that specific point on the bridge, as if answering a call only they can hear. Story 33. The People's Temple Agricultural Project. In 1978, what began as a utopian commune in the jungles of Guyana ended in the largest mass murder-suicide in modern history, with over 900 people dead in a single day. Jim Jones, the charismatic leader of the People's Temple, had convinced his followers to abandon their lives in California and move to a remote settlement called Jonestown, promising them a socialist paradise free from persecution. But behind the facade of community cooperation, Jones was conducting psychological experiments on his followers, using sleep deprivation, public humiliation, and staged emergencies to maintain absolute control. The settlement was surrounded by armed guards, and residents were forbidden from leaving or communicating with the outside world. Jones conducted regular white night drills where followers were forced to drink what they believed was poison, then told it was just a loyalty test. When Congressman Leo Ryan arrived to investigate reports of abuse, Jones knew his control was slipping. On the 18th of November, 1978, Ryan and several journalists were murdered at the airstrip while trying to leave with defectors. Back at the compound, Jones gathered his followers for a final white night, but this time the poison was real. Audio recordings from that day capture Jones convincing parents to give cyanide-laced flavor aid to their children first, telling them it was revolutionary suicide rather than murder. The tapes reveal the sounds of children crying and adults pleading as guards forced them to drink the poison. Within hours, the jungle compound was filled with bodies, including 276 children who had no choice in their fate. The final count was 918 dead, making Jonestown synonymous with the ultimate manipulation of human trust and the horrific consequences of blind faith in charismatic authority. Story 34. The Aerial School UFO Incident. In 1994, 62 children at a rural school in Zimbabwe witnessed one of the most credible UFO encounters in modern history, with their consistent testimonies defying explanation even decades later. During morning break at Aerial School, students playing in the schoolyard suddenly stopped and stared at the sky as metallic objects descended from above. The children, ranging in age from 5 to 12, described seeing multiple silver discs landing in the rough terrain beyond the school property. From the craft emerged beings that the children described as having large black eyes and wearing tight-fitting dark suits. The entities appeared to communicate with the children telepathically, showing them disturbing visions of environmental destruction and warnings about humanity's future. When teachers arrived, they found the children in a state of shock, some crying, others standing motionless as if paralyzed. The remarkable aspect of this case is the consistency of the children's accounts. Despite being interviewed separately and over many years, their descriptions never wavered. BBC journalist Tim Leach, who interviewed the children shortly after the incident, was struck by their sincerity and the trauma evident in their responses. The children drew remarkably similar pictures of the craft and beings, and many described receiving telepathic messages about the planet's ecological future. Skeptics have suggested mass hallucination or suggestion, but child psychologists who examined the students found no evidence of fabrication or coaching. The incident was investigated by Harvard psychiatrist John Mack, who concluded that the children's experiences were genuine and traumatic. 25 years later, the former students maintain their stories unchanged, describing the encounter as the most significant event of their lives. The Aerial School incident remains one of the most compelling cases of potential extraterrestrial contact, made more disturbing by the apocalyptic warnings the children claim to have received. Story 35. The Villisca Axe Murder House. On a quiet June night in 1912, an entire family and their 2 young guests were brutally murdered in their sleep in the small town of Villisca, Iowa, creating one of America's most infamous unsolved cases. The Moore family, parents Josiah and Sarah, and their 4 children, had attended a church service with their neighbors, the Stillinger sisters, who were invited to spend the night. Sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., an unknown assailant entered the house and methodically murdered all 8 victims with an axe. The killer's behavior was deeply disturbing. After committing the murders, they remained in the house for hours, covering all the mirrors with cloth, closing all the curtains, and placing a plate of food at the foot of each bed. The murderer even took time to wash the axe and carefully position it against the wall before leaving. When the bodies were discovered the next morning, the scene was so horrific that investigators were unable to eat for days. The children had been killed in their beds, their faces so badly damaged they were unrecognizable. The killer had also placed a 4-pound slab of bacon next to the murder weapon, a detail that has never been explained. Despite extensive investigation and numerous suspects, including a traveling preacher with a history of mental illness, the case was never solved. The house itself seemed to be cursed. Subsequent owners reported unexplained sounds, moving objects, and an oppressive atmosphere that drove most residents away within months. Paranormal investigators have documented unexplained voices, footsteps, and the sounds of children crying. The most disturbing aspect is that the killer's ritual behavior suggests they may have committed similar crimes elsewhere, meaning this family's tragedy might be part of a larger pattern of murders that was never connected. The Villisca Axe murder house remains one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries, a monument to the evil that can lurk in even the most peaceful communities. Story 36. The Keddy Murders. In 1981, a mother and her children were brutally murdered in their remote cabin in the Sierra Nevada mountains, beginning a case that would expose police corruption and become one of California's most notorious unsolved crimes. Sue Sharp and her 5 children were staying in cabin 28 at the Keddy Resort when intruders broke in during the night. Sue, her son John, and his friend Dana were found bound with electrical cord and brutally beaten to death with a hammer and knives. The killer had used weapons found in the cabin, suggesting the murders were not premeditated but rather a crime of opportunity that escalated into something far worse. The most disturbing aspect was that Sue's 12-year-old daughter Tina was missing from the scene, and her younger children were found unharmed in another room, apparently having slept through the entire attack. The crime scene was contaminated by police who allowed neighbors and reporters to walk through, destroying crucial evidence. For 3 years, Tina's fate remained unknown until her skull was found in a remote location, indicating she had been kidnapped and murdered separately. The investigation revealed a web of drugs, corruption, and cover-ups involving local law enforcement and community members. Key evidence was lost or destroyed, suspects were never properly interviewed, and the case was repeatedly mishandled by authorities who seemed more interested in protecting certain individuals than finding the truth. Witnesses reported seeing suspicious vehicles and individuals in the area that night, but their statements were ignored. The most chilling detail emerged years later, when investigators realized the killer had likely been watching the family for weeks, learning their routines and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Keddy murders remain unsolved, with surviving family members still fighting for justice and answers about why their loved ones were so brutally taken and why the system failed them so completely. Story 37. The Valentich Disappearance. In 1978, a young pilot named Frederick Valentich vanished while flying over the Bass Strait in Australia, but his final radio transmission described something that defied all logical explanation. Valentich, an experienced 20-year-old pilot, was flying a Cessna 182 from Melbourne to King Island when he contacted air traffic control with an urgent message. He reported that a large aircraft was following him, but it wasn't like any plane he had ever seen. The aircraft had 4 bright landing lights, was traveling at incredible speed, and appeared to be playing some kind of cat-and-mouse game with his plane. Air traffic controllers, confused by his description, asked him to identify the aircraft type, but Valentich could only say it was not an aircraft, and that it was hovering above him. His voice became increasingly panicked as he described the object performing impossible maneuvers, disappearing and reappearing around his plane. The final transmission was the most disturbing. Valentich reported that his engine was running roughly and that the strange aircraft was hovering directly above him. His last words were, "It's not an aircraft," followed by 17 seconds of strange metallic scraping sounds that audio experts have never been able to identify. Then silence. Despite extensive searches involving military aircraft and ships, no trace of Valentich or his plane was ever found. The Bass Strait is relatively shallow, and aircraft that crash there are typically recovered, making his complete disappearance even more mysterious. The case became one of Australia's most famous UFO incidents, but skeptics suggested he staged his own disappearance or became disoriented and crashed into the sea. However, the audio recording of his final transmission remains unexplained, with the metallic sounds matching no known aircraft or mechanical failure. The Valentich disappearance stands as one of the most compelling cases of potential extraterrestrial encounter, made more disturbing by the fear evident in his voice and the complete absence of any physical evidence of his fate. Story 38. The Antikythera Mechanism. In 1901, Greek sponge divers discovered a 2000-year-old shipwreck containing a device so technologically advanced it shouldn't have existed for another 1,500 years. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, is an ancient Greek analog computer that could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets with extraordinary accuracy. When scientists finally decoded its function using modern X-ray technology, they discovered it contained over 80 bronze gears, working in perfect harmony to perform calculations that ancient civilizations supposedly couldn't comprehend. The device could predict eclipses, track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, and even account for the irregular orbit of the moon. What makes this discovery truly disturbing is that it represents technology that was completely lost to humanity for over a millennium. The level of mathematical and engineering knowledge required to create such a device suggests that ancient Greek civilization had achieved scientific capabilities that weren't rediscovered until the Renaissance. The mechanism's complexity rivals that of 18th century clockwork, yet it was built in the 1st century BCE. This raises terrifying questions about how much knowledge humanity has lost over the centuries, and what other advanced technologies might have existed in the ancient world. The device was found corroded and broken, and researchers estimate it took decades to fully understand its function. The most disturbing implication is that if one such device survived by chance, how many others were lost forever? The Antikythera mechanism suggests that human technological progress is not linear but cyclical, with advanced civilizations rising and falling, taking their knowledge with them. It's a reminder that our current level of technology might not be as unique or advanced as we believe, and that previous civilizations might have achieved things we're only beginning to understand. Story 39. The WOW Signal. On the 15th of August, 1977, astronomer Jerry Eman detected a radio signal from space that was so unusual and powerful he wrote, "Wow," in the margin of the computer printout, but the signal's origin and meaning remain one of the most disturbing mysteries in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The signal lasted exactly 72 seconds, was 30 times stronger than typical background radiation, and came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. What made it extraordinary was its frequency. It was broadcast at 1,420 MHz, the same frequency that hydrogen atoms emit when they flip their electron spin. This frequency is considered the universal hello by SETI researchers because any intelligent civilization would know that hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. The signal's characteristics suggested it was artificial and originated from outside our solar system, potentially from a civilization trying to communicate with other intelligent life. The most disturbing aspect is that despite decades of attempts to relocate the signal, it has never been detected again. The Big Ear telescope listened to that same region of space for years afterward, but the signal never repeated. This creates a terrifying paradox. If the signal was from an intelligent civilization, why did they only broadcast once? Did something happen to prevent them from transmitting again? The signal's power requirements would have been enormous, suggesting an advanced civilization with technology far beyond our current capabilities. Some researchers calculate that if the signal originated from near the center of the Milky Way, it would have required a transmitter with the power of millions of suns. The fact that such a powerful signal was broadcast just once and never repeated raises disturbing questions about the fate of its creators. The WOW signal remains the strongest candidate for extraterrestrial communication ever detected, but its brief singular nature makes it more frightening than reassuring about the possibility of contact with alien intelligence. Story 40. The Hinterkaifeck Murders. In 1922, a family of 6 was brutally murdered on their isolated farm in Germany, but the most disturbing aspect was that the killer remained on the property for days after the murders, living among the corpses. The Gruber family had been experiencing strange occurrences for months before their deaths. Footsteps in the attic, newspapers going missing, and tools being moved from their usual places. Andreas Gruber, the family patriarch, had discovered footprints in the snow leading from the forest to his house, but none leading away. On the night of the 31st of March, an unknown assailant used a mattock, a farming tool, to kill Andreas, his wife Kazilia, their daughter Victoria, and her 2 children. The family maid, who had started work that very day, was also murdered. The killer's behavior after the murders was deeply disturbing. They remained in the house for several days, feeding the livestock, eating meals, and even lighting fires to keep warm. Neighbors noticed smoke coming from the chimney and assumed the family was home, never suspecting that a murderer was living among 6 corpses. When the bodies were finally discovered, investigators found evidence that the killer had been methodically going through the family's belongings, searching for something specific. The crime scene suggested the murders were not random but targeted, yet no motive was ever established. The case became one of Germany's most infamous unsolved murders, with over 100 suspects investigated but never charged. The most terrifying aspect is that the killer demonstrated a complete lack of normal human emotion, calmly going about daily routines while surrounded by the decomposing bodies of their victims. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved, a chilling reminder of the evil that can lurk in rural isolation and the disturbing possibility that sometimes the most horrific crimes are committed by individuals who can seamlessly blend back into society. Story 41. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. In 1959, 9 experienced hikers died under mysterious circumstances in the Ural Mountains of Russia, leaving behind a scene so bizarre that it has spawned conspiracy theories for over 60 years. The group, led by Igor Dyatlov, was making a winter trek to Otorten Mountain when something went catastrophically wrong. When rescue teams found their tent 3 weeks later, it had been cut open from the inside, and the hikers had fled barefoot into the freezing wilderness. The bodies were found scattered across the mountainside, some partially clothed, others completely naked, despite temperatures of -30 degrees Celsius. The autopsy reports revealed injuries that defied explanation. One victim had a fractured skull, another had massive chest trauma that would have required the force of a car crash, and one woman was missing her tongue and eyes. Several bodies showed signs of radiation exposure, and their clothing emitted radioactive particles. The most disturbing detail was that some victims had turned orange, and their hair had turned grey, suggesting exposure to unknown chemicals or radiation. The official Soviet investigation concluded that the hikers died from a compelling natural force, but classified all files related to the case for decades. Witnesses reported seeing orange orbs in the sky the night of the incident, and the area was known for secret military testing. The hikers' final photographs showed strange lights in the sky, and their diary entries described an oppressive atmosphere and feelings of being watched. The tent was found with food still inside, suggesting the hikers fled suddenly without taking essential survival gear. The bizarre nature of their injuries, including internal trauma without external wounds, has led to theories ranging from military experiments to animal attacks to extraterrestrial encounters. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries, a reminder that some events are so strange they challenge our understanding of what's possible in the natural world. Story 42. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse Mystery. In December 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers vanished from a remote Scottish island, leaving behind only a log entry that hinted at supernatural forces beyond human comprehension. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse was considered one of the most isolated postings in the British Isles, manned by 3 experienced keepers who maintained the light for ships navigating the treacherous waters. When the relief vessel arrived on the 26th of December, they found the lighthouse unmanned, the light extinguished, and no sign of the 3 men. The last log entry, dated the 13th of December, was written in increasingly frantic handwriting, describing storms of unprecedented violence and waves that seemed to reach impossible heights. The keeper wrote of severe winds and noted that his colleague Donald MacArthur was crying, which was completely out of character for the steady, experienced lighthouse keeper. The final entry mentioned that all 3 men had prayed together, something they had never done before. The most disturbing discovery was that the lighthouse's landing platform, built 200 feet above sea level, showed signs of massive wave damage, despite there being no record of storms severe enough to reach that height. One of the keeper's waterproof coats was missing, suggesting someone had gone out into the storm, but his lifebelt was still hanging on its hook. The other 2 men's coats remained in the lighthouse, indicating they had rushed out without proper protection. The clock in the lighthouse had stopped, and the kitchen showed signs of an interrupted meal. Local folklore spoke of the island being cursed, haunted by the spirits of ancient Celtic warriors, and residents reported seeing phantom lights on the island for months after the disappearance. The official investigation concluded that the men had been swept away by a freak wave while attempting to secure equipment, but the evidence didn't support this theory. The Flannan Isles mystery remains unsolved, a testament to the power of the sea and the vulnerability of humans against forces they cannot control or understand. Story 43. The Tunguska Event. On the 30th of June, 1908, a massive explosion flattened 80 million trees across 2,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest, but no crater was ever found, and the cause remains one of the most disturbing mysteries in modern science. The explosion, estimated to be 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, occurred in one of the most remote regions of Russia, preventing immediate investigation. Witnesses hundreds of kilometers away reported seeing a fireball brighter than the sun, followed by a shockwave that shattered windows and knocked people to the ground. The explosion was so powerful, it was detected by seismographs around the world and caused atmospheric disturbances that were visible as far away as London. When scientists finally reached the site 19 years later, they found a scene of devastation unlike anything in recorded history. Trees were flattened in a radial pattern extending for miles, but strangely, trees at the exact center of the blast remained standing, stripped of their branches like massive telephone poles. The most disturbing aspect was the complete absence of any meteorite fragments or crater, despite the explosion's enormous power. The affected area showed signs of rapid plant growth and genetic mutations in local wildlife, suggesting the explosion had radioactive properties decades before nuclear weapons were invented. Local indigenous peoples reported that the explosion was preceded by strange lights in the sky, and that the area became cursed, with animals avoiding the region and plants growing in unnatural patterns. Some witnesses described seeing a cylindrical object streaking across the sky before the explosion, leading to theories about extraterrestrial spacecraft or secret weapons testing. The Tunguska event represents one of the most powerful explosions in recorded history, yet its cause remains unknown, making it a disturbing reminder of the mysterious forces that can reshape our planet without warning or explanation. Story 44. The Betz Sphere. In 1974, a Florida family discovered a mysterious metal sphere on their property that exhibited impossible properties, defying the laws of physics and terrifying government officials who tried to examine it. The Betz family found the 20-pound perfectly smooth sphere while investigating damage from a brush fire on their land. At first, they thought it was a cannonball or piece of space debris, but when they brought it inside, the sphere began exhibiting strange behavior. It would roll across the floor on its own, change direction without any external force, and emit a low humming sound that could be felt as much as heard. The sphere seemed to respond to sunlight, becoming more active on bright days and nearly motionless during cloudy weather. Most disturbing were the sounds it made, a metallic ringing that seemed to come from inside the sphere, as if something was moving around within the solid metal. The family's dog would howl and run away whenever the sphere was nearby, and their young daughter claimed it followed her around the house. When the story became public, the sphere was examined by scientists and military officials who confirmed its unusual properties but couldn't explain them. X-rays revealed what appeared to be two smaller spheres inside the main one, but the metal showed no signs of welding or joining. The sphere's magnetic properties were inconsistent and seemed to change depending on its orientation. Most unsettling was its apparent intelligence would respond to music, rolling toward the source of sound, and seemed to anticipate human movement. Government officials eventually classified their findings and removed the sphere from the family, claiming it was a potential security threat. The Betz sphere represents one of the most documented cases of an object that appeared to violate fundamental laws of physics, leaving behind only questions about whether it was of terrestrial origin or something far stranger. Story 45. The Hollow Earth Theory, Evidence. In 1947, Admiral Richard Byrd claimed to have discovered openings to a hollow Earth during his polar expeditions, but his detailed accounts of underground civilizations and advanced technology were quickly classified by the military. Byrd, a decorated naval officer and experienced explorer, reported that during his flight over the North Pole, his instruments began malfunctioning, and he found himself flying through an opening in the Earth's crust. According to his classified diary, He discovered a vast underground world with its own sun, populated by an advanced civilization that had mastered anti-gravity technology and energy sources beyond human understanding. The beings he encountered were described as tall, blonde, and peaceful, but deeply concerned about humanity's development of nuclear weapons. They showed him underground cities with crystal formations that provided light and energy, and vehicles that could travel at impossible speeds without any visible propulsion system. Bird claimed the beings warned him about the dangers of nuclear war and asked him to return to the surface world with their message of peace. When he attempted to report his findings to military officials, he was debriefed for several hours and ordered never to speak publicly about his discovery. His diary was confiscated, and he was warned that discussing his experience would be considered a breach of national security. The most disturbing aspect of Bird's account is that it wasn't an isolated incident. Other polar explorers reported similar experiences, including compass readings that pointed downward instead of toward magnetic north, and sightings of warm areas in the Arctic where plant life thrived despite the freezing temperatures. Satellite imagery has revealed unusual formations at both poles that some researchers believe could be entrances to underground caverns, but these areas remain restricted to civilian research. The Hollow Earth theory, while dismissed by mainstream science, continues to generate interest because of the credibility of witnesses like Bird and the consistent nature of their reports about underground civilizations that may have existed beneath our feet for thousands of years. Story 46. The Oakville Blobs. In August 1994, the town of Oakville, Washington, experienced a rain of mysterious gelatinous blobs that fell from the sky, making residents violently ill and defying scientific explanation. The blobs, described as translucent and jelly-like, covered the town during what appeared to be a normal rainstorm. Within hours of exposure, residents began experiencing severe flu-like symptoms, including nausea, dizziness, and breathing difficulties. The local hospital was overwhelmed with patients suffering from identical symptoms, but doctors couldn't identify the cause of the illness. Officer David Lacey, who was on duty during the blob rain, collected samples in his freezer and noticed that the material had a strange, almost organic quality that seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm. The blobs contained human white blood cells, which should have been impossible since they fell from the sky. Laboratory analysis revealed that the material also contained bacteria typically found in human digestive systems, raising disturbing questions about its origin. The most alarming discovery was that the blobs seemed to be alive. They moved slightly when observed under a microscope and appeared to respond to temperature changes. Residents reported that their pets became lethargic, and some died after coming into contact with the material. The official explanation suggested the blobs were jellyfish that had been evaporated by military bombing exercises over the ocean and then fell as rain. But this theory couldn't explain the presence of human cells or the specific illness symptoms. The timing of the event was suspicious. It occurred during a period of classified military testing in the Pacific Northwest, leading to speculation about biological weapons experiments gone wrong. The most disturbing aspect is that similar blob rains have been reported in other locations around the world, always followed by mysterious illnesses and official explanations that don't match the evidence. The Oakville blobs remain one of the most unsettling examples of how unexplained phenomena can directly impact human health, leaving residents with lingering questions about what fell from the sky and why the government seemed so eager to dismiss their concerns. Story 47. The Cicada 3301 Puzzles. In 2012, one of the most complex and mysterious puzzle series ever created appeared on the internet, recruiting individuals with exceptional intelligence for an unknown purpose that may involve global surveillance or intelligence operations. The first Cicada 3301 puzzle appeared as a simple image posted on 4chan with the message, "Hello, we are looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we have devised a test." What followed was a series of increasingly complex puzzles that required knowledge of cryptography, steganography, ancient literature, and advanced mathematics. The puzzles led solvers across the internet and into the real world, with clues hidden in images, books, and physical locations around the globe. Those who progressed far enough received phone calls with coordinates, leading to specific locations where they found additional clues posted on telephone poles, under bridges, and in other hidden locations. The most disturbing aspect was the organization's apparent unlimited resources and global reach. Clues appeared simultaneously in multiple countries, suggesting a vast network of operatives. The puzzles required knowledge that went far beyond typical internet challenges, including obscure historical references, extinct languages, and mathematical concepts that only experts would understand. Successful solvers reported being contacted by representatives of Cicada 3301 and invited to participate in unspecified activities, but they were required to sign non-disclosure agreements and never revealed what they discovered. The organization's name itself is mysterious. Cicadas are insects that emerge from underground every 17 years, and the number 3301 has significance in various cryptographic systems. Some researchers believe Cicada 3301 is a recruitment tool for intelligence agencies, while others suggest it's connected to cryptocurrency development or secret societies. The puzzles stopped appearing after 2016, but their impact on internet culture and cryptography was profound. The most unsettling theory is that Cicada 3301 was identifying and recruiting individuals with the specific skill sets needed for cyber warfare or mass surveillance operations, using their intellectual curiosity to draw them into activities they might not have supported if approached directly. Story 48. The Black Knight Satellite. For over 60 years, amateur radio operators have detected signals from a mysterious object orbiting Earth in a polar orbit, but its origin and purpose remain unknown, leading to speculation about extraterrestrial surveillance. The object, dubbed the Black Knight Satellite, has been tracked by both amateur and professional astronomers since the 1950s, but it doesn't match any known satellite or piece of space debris. The signals it emits are unlike anything produced by human technology, consisting of complex patterns that seem to follow mathematical sequences rather than random noise. The most disturbing aspect is that the object appears to be much older than any human space program. Some researchers claim it's been in orbit for over 13,000 years, predating human civilization. NASA has photographed the object multiple times, but official explanations have been contradictory and unsatisfying. The agency has variously claimed it's space debris, a thermal blanket, or a piece of broken satellite, but the object's consistent orbital pattern and signal emissions suggest something more sophisticated. The satellite's orbit is highly unusual. It follows a path that would provide optimal surveillance coverage of Earth's populated areas, passing over every point on the planet's surface within a few days. Radio operators who have decoded portions of its transmissions report that the signals contain star maps and mathematical formulas that seem to describe the solar system's position within the galaxy. The most chilling discovery came in 1973, when a Scottish astronomer claimed to have fully decoded the satellite's main transmission. It was a star map, showing Earth's position as viewed from the Epsilon Boötis star system 13,000 years ago. If authentic, this suggests the satellite has been monitoring Earth since the last ice age, silently observing human development and potentially transmitting our progress to unknown recipients. The Black Knight satellite remains one of the most persistent mysteries in space observation, a reminder that we may not be alone in monitoring our planet. Story 49. The Max Headroom Broadcast Signal Intrusion. On the 22nd of November, 1987, a mysterious figure wearing a Max Headroom mask hijacked television broadcasts in Chicago, delivering a bizarre and disturbing message that terrified viewers and demonstrated the vulnerability of mass media systems. The incident began during a sports broadcast when the normal signal was suddenly replaced by the image of someone wearing a rubber Max Headroom mask against a moving corrugated background. The hijacker's voice was distorted and nearly unintelligible, but they delivered a rambling message that included references to television executives, Coca-Cola, and bizarre sexual imagery. The most disturbing aspect wasn't just the content, but the technical sophistication required to override broadcast signals from two major television stations. The hijacker had managed to intercept microwave transmissions between broadcast towers, requiring expensive equipment and detailed knowledge of television broadcasting systems. The incident lasted only 90 seconds, but it left viewers deeply unsettled by the combination of technological violation and psychological horror. The hijackers' movements were erratic and unsettling, swaying back and forth while delivering their message in a voice that sounded both mechanical and human. The broadcast ended with the figure being spanked with a fly swatter while making disturbing sounds, creating an image that burned itself into viewers' memories. Despite extensive investigation by the FBI and broadcast authorities, the hijacker was never identified or caught. The case represents one of the most successful acts of broadcast terrorism in history, demonstrating how easily mass media could be weaponized to deliver disturbing messages to millions of people. The incident led to complete overhauls of broadcast security systems, but it also revealed the psychological power of unexpected interruptions to normal media consumption. The Max Headroom hijacking remains a disturbing reminder of how vulnerable our information systems are to individuals with the right knowledge and equipment, and how a brief moment of chaos can leave lasting trauma on an entire population. Story 50. The hum. Since the 1970s, people around the world have reported hearing a persistent, low-frequency humming sound that has no identifiable source, driving some to madness and others to suicide. The hum, as it's become known, affects approximately 2% of the population in certain geographic areas, creating a constant background noise that sounds like a distant diesel engine or electrical generator. The most disturbing aspect is that the sound is not detectable by recording equipment. It exists only in the minds of those who hear it. Sufferers describe it as a continuous, low-pitched droning that intensifies at night and seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The hum is most commonly reported in specific locations around the world, including Taos, New Mexico, Bristol, England, and Bondi, Australia, leading researchers to believe it's connected to geological or environmental factors. Those affected by the hum report severe sleep deprivation, anxiety, and in extreme cases, thoughts of suicide driven by the relentless nature of the sound. The phenomenon appears to be selective. Family members living in the same house will often have completely different experiences, with some hearing the hum constantly while others hear nothing at all. Medical examinations of hum sufferers have revealed no common physical characteristics that would explain their sensitivity to the sound. The most terrifying aspect is that the hum seems to be spreading, with new cases reported in previously unaffected areas and the intensity apparently increasing over time. Some researchers believe the hum is caused by seismic activity, others point to industrial sources or military testing, but no theory explains all the documented cases. The psychological impact on sufferers is profound. Many report feeling isolated and disbelieved by family members and medical professionals who cannot hear the sound. Support groups have formed online, where hum sufferers share their experiences and coping strategies, but no cure or treatment has been found. The hum remains one of the most disturbing examples of a phenomenon that exists at the intersection of physical and psychological reality, affecting real people in measurable ways, while remaining invisible to scientific instruments, and incomprehensible to those who don't experience it. Conclusion. These 50 disturbing real events remind us that our world contains mysteries that challenge our understanding of reality, human nature, and the forces that shape our existence. From unexplained disappearances to impossible phenomena, from historical horrors to modern enigmas, these stories reveal that truth is often stranger and more terrifying than any fiction we could imagine. They serve as reminders that despite our technological advances and scientific knowledge, there are still dark corners of human experience that resist explanation, leaving us to wonder what other secrets are hidden in the shadows of our supposedly understood world.